International horror fans rejoice. Joko Anwar, the mad genius behind The Queen of Black Magic, Impetigore, and Ritual, is back with a sequel to his beloved Satan's Slaves, entitled Satan's Slaves Communion. This one comes all the way from Indonesia, folks, and it's so good. Welcome back to ML Miller Frights. I'm ML Miller. Before we begin, please do me a favor and punch that like button down below. Share this video with all of your social media addicted pals. Click subscribe to this channel and ring that bell for notifications. Satan's Slaves Communion is new, streaming on Shudder. It's directed and written by Joko Anwar. Picking up just a short time after the events of the first Satan's Slaves, itself a remake of Satan's Slave from 1982, the three surviving children and their father move to an apartment high-rise in hopes to find some normalcy. But soon they find that the evil unleashed when their mother signed a pact with the devil long ago in order to attain fame and fertility has followed them there. In order to prepare myself for this sequel, I rewatched the 2017 film from Indonesian horror sensation Joko Anwar. I don't want to say it is required viewing, as I feel Satan's Slaves Communion does a decent job of summing up what occurs in the first film. But if you really want to get the full experience, you'll want to dive into both films. Much like Satan's Slaves, Anwar adopts a kitchen sink approach to his scares, inundating the viewer with one horrifying scene after another. Communion simply amps up the pressure to a fever's pitch much earlier in the story than its predecessor. The last hour of Communion, after a specific elevator scene, is a non-stop ride full of pants-filling scares and nightmares that will make you feel like you're a kid again. If you're looking for a film that is full of genuine and effective scares, Satan's Slaves Communion is it. What Anwar does so well is set the stage with likable and relatable characters. The three kids, Rini, played by Tara Basro, Tony, played by Endi Arfian, and Bondi, played by Nassar Anouz, are all likable and have grown a bit from the last film. But by having the kids age in real time only makes you feel like you've really grown up with these guys. All three have intriguing stories that are distinctly laid out in the narrative. Tony has a crush on an older woman in the building. Bondi deals with survivor's guilt from the original, but manages to be playful and make close friends despite all of that. Rini has dreams of going to school and leaving her family to study abroad, but feels responsible for raising her siblings, with her father, played by Bront Pilare, always away at work, and their mother dead from the last film. It's fun seeing how these kids have grown and seeing how the trauma from the last film affected their development. It's because I experienced sheer terror with these kids for 2 films now that I am so invested in these characters. Anwar develops these characters out of their love for one another, as well as the trauma that occurred. Each has grown in some way from the horrors they survived, some for the better, others for the worse, but it's all handled with sophistication and a strong attention to character. You just don't see that type of continuity these days, and while the comparisons are always going to be there, it is the reason why people loved the Freeling family from the Poltergeist movies and followed them from the first to the second film. The main difference is that Poltergeist 2 dipped in quality, while the sequel to Satan's Slaves kicked it up a notch and a half. While Anwar continues with much of the same rapid-fire scares technique that made Satan's Slaves so enjoyable, he takes full advantage of the new environment and gives each cast member such a compelling story on their own that I found myself preferring the sequel to the original. Moving the horror to a multi-leveled apartment building with endless corridors, flights of stairs, strange apartments, and all sorts of passages that are not meant to be ventured into makes for an amazing place to set a horror flick. I love it that Anwar fills every dark corner with a new and terrifying scare. Anwar also develops the story surrounding the cursed family and takes it to the next level. The film culminates with a strobe-lit ritual that is absolutely riveting. The film really opens up the mythology formed in the original and gives it a chance to breathe and evolve in this second film. Reminiscent of the machine gun-like delivery of comedy in the Airplane and Naked Gun movies, if one scare doesn't get you in Anwar's Satan's Slaves Communion, you needn't worry. Another one is on its way soon to make your whole body twitch and jump out of its seat. What impresses me is that so many scares occur and how different each one of them are. Some use strobe lights to build tension, others use sound, other scenes pan back and forth to amp up the suspense, while other scenes have things occurring in the foreground, while other things more insidious are going on in the background. Anwar truly uses every horror trick in the book to make this a potently scary movie from start to finish. Before I wrap things up, I wanted to make an observation about not just Satan's Slaves Communion, but a lot of international films that have been so successful lately. While religion is a taboo subject in so much of mainstream horror in America, I find it interesting that religious culture is such a fertile ground for horror in other countries. Sure, we have about one tepid exorcism movie release a year, but there really hasn't been a movie taking American religion to task since The Exorcist. But looking at as many international films as I have, it is interesting that so many of these films revolve around the religious practices and cultural beliefs of countries other than the US. One might write it off as other countries being more superstitious, but I think there's something deeper going on. These religious aspects, such as the way the dead are used in ceremony, is front and center in Satan's Slaves and its sequel. I think, had the film attempted to skirt around religion like American horror often does, it would have been much less effective. Just some food for thought, and I hope to delve deeper into this concept in future reviews. The closest current-day American counterpart I can think of for the Satan's Slaves movies is the Insidious franchise. But again, while James Wan's series fizzled after the first one, Satan's Slaves gets better and better. It even ends on somewhat of a cliffhanger, and I cannot wait to see what sort of terror Anwar has in store for us the next time. If you're a fan of international horror, or just horror in general, Satan's Slaves Communion shouldn't be missed.
You're doomed to live the life you're meant to be, stuck inside